What products or categories do you currently sell on Amazon?
Q4, there's stock issues. People are running out of stock all the time because the demand is so high.
Do you mind showing us a live demo to our audience?
This is a good example of a product in the OA space.
If you had $1,000 to start Amazon, how would you spend it?
I knew I wanted to start my own business eventually and get out of the whole 9 to 5.
What products do you recommend people to sell this year?
I get this question a lot, and I usually just say that.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, BQool invited an Amazon seller who only started in 2021 with $1,000. And now he has made 1,000 times more sales. He's a 7-figure seller. In this webinar, Joe will tell us his journey from quitting CPA, which stands for Certified Public Accountant, and now he's doing online arbitrage and building his Amazon business as an entrepreneur, working hard with his team of VAs. Let's find out how he manages to build his Amazon business. We welcome Joe. We welcome Joe to the show.
Love that intro. Thank you for having me.
So Joe, before we continue, what was your first online business?
So I started doing t-shirts, the kind of typical thing that everyone tries to do. Tried to make our own brand when I was early on in college, and we're just screen printing t-shirts. That failed epically. Every entrepreneur in the beginning is going to have so many failed ventures, and then eventually something ends up working out. So yeah, that's how we did. It was just me and a couple buddies getting screen prints and all that stuff.
Do you still have t-shirts from back then?
Not really. We were so bad at it that the things were coming off of the t-shirt after you wash them, the print was coming off. Yeah, so we ended up just phasing it out. We all lost $200 each. It wasn't too big of a deal.
How did you decide to sell on Amazon? Moving from a t-shirts business?
I was always I knew I wanted to start my own business eventually and get out of the whole 9 to 5. Even before I got into the 9 to 5, I was doing my internship and I kind of knew what to expect, what it would be like. I was always thinking about how could I get out and how could I make my own business. So yeah, I was following some guy on Instagram. His name's Jerry Liu, and he flips used books from eBay and then sells them back on Amazon. So it's one way you can make money. If you don't have a lot of money, it's a very easy way to get into it. So I started with only $1,000. I didn't really have much, so thought that was pretty intriguing. I bought his course. It was a $40 course on how to flip books from eBay to Amazon. Even you could do non-prime on Amazon with books and flip them prime. So I was doing mix of that with the Keep a Product Finder. And yeah, so then I started getting into other stuff. I started in July, so Q4 was around the corner, and I was looking into toys and all that stuff. And then I started selling, Legos and stuff like that, because for the holiday rush and all that. And yeah, and then I started getting into OA more into 2022.
What about the item that made you the most profit?
Yeah, well, for me, it's more I would say the Legos definitely made me a lot of profit, though. But for me, it's having a wide array of products. I'm not trying to lean on one. The Nike socks, those did really well. So I made a lot of money on those back earlier in the year. So yeah, I would say that would be the one product. But I've never been one to lean on one product. I'd like to be a little more risk adverse in that. You don't want to have one product tank, especially with OA. It's your risk is that one product goes bad, and then that's your whole source of your business. Then your whole business is failing in a sense. So
you want to spread out your risk by having different products and also categories. Just back to the Nike socks, because I recently purchased Nike socks at an outlet, but the price wasn't that cheap. So I'm wondering, how are you able to get Nike socks for such a good price?
Yeah, so back when I was buying them, I don't really buy them anymore. There's some shady stuff going on with discounted gift cards, and I'm not trying to get into that. So yeah, I was buying them, Eastbay had a bunch of big sales when they were going under, so I'd get them 40, 50% off.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so you were getting them for $13, $14. So it ended up working out. If these socks were going for $28, you'd get a nice 30% ROI on that. So yeah, but yeah, the ways to create margin with that is, a place like Kohl's has a bunch of that type of stuff. You can get discounted gift cards and then add that to boost your margin.
So talking about products, what products or categories do you currently sell on Amazon?
Yeah, it's A to Z, everything, honestly. But I would say the main churners of my revenue are beauty, household, and still do a little bit of apparel, predominantly beauty and household though. And then I like tools and home improvement as well.
And what products do you recommend people to sell this year?
I get this question a lot, and I usually just say that whatever you have knowledge in, whatever you have an experience in. Let's say, you maybe resold sneakers, or you collected sneakers, and like you have a knowledge of shoes, and that could be a good place to start. But don't lean on one category. Start to branch out as soon as you can. As soon as you get comfortable with how like Keepa, SolarAmp, all these softwares work, BQool and stuff like that, and then start to branch out into different categories. But yeah, like let's say there's another reason. Let's say you're like a mom and you have kids, you know what the popular snacks are. So there's groceries, a perfect place to start.
Which categories do you recommend people not to go into?
I wouldn't say not to go into this, but like I said, shoes and apparel, there's no category that I wouldn't go into. Yeah, shoes and apparel, just keep in mind the returns on that. Like, the people will return the product. So make sure you're getting a higher margin. So if you're going into shoes and apparel, don't try to go for like 20% ROI. Returns are going to kill your margins in that sense. Yeah, maybe another category to avoid is like DVDs and video games is a little heavier in gating and harder to get ungated in. So yeah, that's maybe the one category, but I wouldn't cut yourself short, any category. Don't just avoid it because I said to avoid it.
Understood. Yeah. So what tips can you give people when they're doing product sourcing?
I mean, there's certain things that you pick up on as you start to source. I would say a beginner who has no idea how to source, it's mainly putting in the reps, doing it over and over. It's repetition. Like that's how you get good at anything. So, know that you're going to suck at it at first, but there's ways that you can start out. Like you can start out by sourcing, like let's say you start sourcing Nike products. You know that there's a lot of OA sellers there. You can start going through those OA sellers, going through their storefronts. Yeah, and then there's other things like, let's say like Walmart brand, great value. That's another good place to start because you know that a lot of people who are selling great value are probably doing online arbitrage. So you can start going there and just kind of going in a rabbit trail through different stores and then adding these eventually to a sheet where you have a bunch of stores that you can go through on a weekly basis.
Do you mind showing us a live demo to our audience?
Not at all. Let's do it.
All right, fantastic. I'm excited.
Me too. So yeah, this is a good example of a hot product in the OA space, mainly just hard to get. I wouldn't focus on this per se. Like you can definitely look into these products and try to catch it in stock, but I like to go through the stores that are on these listings because then you know that there's a ton of stores that are doing arbitrage. So this is a good place to start. I mean, most people know about Stanley. If you've been doing arbitrage for more than a month or two, you definitely have heard of Stanley in one way or another. It's kind of like the hot thing, like, pools was the hot thing back in 2020 or 2021. And now it's kind of just shifts to different places. So yeah, so this is a demo of storefront stocking. So I'll go through a store and just kind of show the process. But mainly you're looking for a store that has less than around like 500 reviews or so. Typically OA sellers are pretty new and they have around like 300, 200, 100, mostly less than that, honestly. Like some have 50 reviews. So typically I'm looking for someone who has at least like 18 around here so that way they've established, a selling history and they have at least a decent amount of products for you to go through. So let's look for one that's doing FBA and not FBM. I like to look for more FBA sellers, different things and stuff like that. Yeah, 200's a little bit much. Here we go. We can do this 18 review store.
So the first step, you find an Amazon seller that has some ratings. Yeah, typically not super high.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, most OA sellers have like less than 100 reviews, but some of the bigger guys have a couple hundred. But yeah, if you're going to a couple thousand, 5,000 reviews, most likely they're doing wholesale, maybe a slight bit of OA. But if you're a beginner, it's very hard to distinguish what's a arbitrage product and what's a wholesale product. So typically for beginners, I like to say stay under 100. But yeah, so this guy has 18 reviews. We can go check his store out. You see all products and then basically pulls up a list of the products. The sake of just because we're already going through Stanley's, we can go down. Looks like Nike socks. The first thing you're going to want to do is look at the Keepa, so there's a way to set it up in Keepa to see the chart before you click on it. So it makes it easier to go through. Looks like this product tanked. We're just going to skip over it. And this one looks pretty stable.
So you're looking for a product where the pricing is pretty stable. Like it's not not going down.
Yeah, so this looks pretty stable. Looks like the price floor here is around 26 or so for FBA, maybe 25 and over here. And then the ceiling is around $30 to $32. So you're going to want it to ideally be profitable most of the time, if not all the time. So you have to think about it in supply demand. So more supply comes on, the price goes down. And as the supply starts to sell out, the price starts to go up. So as of right now, the supply is starting to go back up. Looks like the price is starting to go down. So you just want to keep that in mind if you're sourcing this product. Yeah, so price is very sensitive to the amount of supply and sellers on the listing. And also, it looks like rank is starting to go up, so that's something else to keep in mind. The Keepa, unfortunately, isn't showing the whole Keepa, like the sales rank here. Sometimes that happens where sales data goes in and out, but yeah, something to keep in mind is the rank is going up, so I would pay attention to that. And then you can use SellerAmp to try to reverse source. You can click Google and then go to Google, and then you can start to try to find these socks somewhere else. So, let's say you got it $15 here, try to add coupons to it and see if you can get it down a little more. Discounted gift cards, another way to do it, and that can help boost your margin. So that's basically in a nutshell how you would arbitrage products. And you just keep going through this list. A beginner's going to take some time to find products. They might find one in 3 hours and then be discouraged, but you have to understand that once you put in the hours, you're going to get better. That one lead will turn to 1 hour. You'll find a lead in 30 minutes. You'll get faster at it. And it's also ebbs and flows. There's going to be days where you don't find stuff, and there's going to be days where you find like 10 in like 2 hours, when you're starting out. And as you start to get better at sourcing, understand that every day is not going to be.
So it's like putting in the repetitions, as you said, and you get better and better, and you might find the product faster and faster. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you pick up on little things like, socks, something that's selling well on Amazon, something to pay attention to possibly. There's certain niches, like certain grocery snack, there might be certain things that do well on Amazon, like crackers or something like that. You pick up little pattern along the way, and then you capitalize on those patterns of products that do well.
So going back to that example of the socks, when like choosing an apparel item, what ROIs are you looking for? Because you said you don't want to be too low, otherwise, you want to cover the returns as well.
Yeah. So really depends on the product. Like shoes, you're going to want to shoot for 35%. The return rates are really high on that. Apparel, you're going to want to go for at least like 30% or so, just so you can factor in that, that return cost of the products. And another thing to keep in mind is like if you're only making $2 profit on a t-shirt or something, that like one return is going to eat all your profit. So that's something to keep in mind. You might want to take a higher ROI on something that's very low profit.
Got it. And you talked about, using gift cards, coupons, and all this other stuff to lower your product sourcing costs. What extensions do you recommend people to do to save more money on sourcing?
Yeah, this is huge because coupons and all that stuff is the name of the game with creating your own margins. So yeah, for coupons, I would say use Capital One Shopping, RetailMeNot. I think Be Frugal is another good one. But the main two I use is RetailMeNot and Capital One. And then you can also use like cashback extensions like Rakuten, Top Cashback to add a little bit more, return on it. But I don't count that in my profit. It's more of just like a bonus. So yeah. And then for discounted gift cards to create more margin, sites you can use is Raise, Card Cookie, Card Cash is another good one. So yeah, tons of websites out there. Just make sure you're doing legit gift card shopping. Don't be paying for your gift cards with crypto and stuff like that. It's a little shady and all that.
What does Capital One do, and also RetailMeNot?
Yeah, so it pops up as like, SellerAmp would pop up as a Chrome extension. It pops up there. You click on it. Usually it automatically drops down. You click try these codes. Say like try 10 codes. It automatically will try all of them for you. And yeah, you just see it will automatically go for the one that has the highest percent off or best deal. So yeah, that's pretty much the strategy there. Just add it as a Chrome extension.
So we talked about doing online arbitrage just then. Which business model do you think is the easiest for beginners to go into?
Yeah, actually just made a post about this today. So arbitrage, online arbitrage or retail arbitrage is definitely the way to go. If you really don't have a lot of money and you're starting with a couple $100s, then maybe go to books, start going to thrift stores, scanning these books. You can turn $1 into 50 if you find one good book. So yeah, but if you have $1,000, then definitely retail or online arbitrage is the way to go. It's very simple, low risk. If you make a mistake, it's not too bad. Let's say you bought a product, you spent $50 to $100 on it. at the end of the day, the worst case is you lose the $50 to $100, but most likely in all cases, usually you end up breaking even if you make a mistake. So, it's very low risk, whereas like wholesale, you got to place like a $500 order, $1,000 order minimum, and then if it goes wrong, it's a lot more of a headache. So that's much easier, and there's so many free resources on YouTube, great YouTubers out there that post all these videos, very helpful videos on how to start, how to source, and all that stuff. So you honestly don't even have to pay for a mentorship or anything like that.
Now, if you had $1,000 to start Amazon today, how would you spend it? What would be the breakup of the different costs and spending?
Yeah, so softwares like the most basic softwares you need, which should be Keepa and SellerAmp. Then later on, you can go for softwares like BQool. Yeah, so those two softwares, $40 a month. The Amazon Pro subscription is $40 a month. So you're running at about $80 a month or so. So that's the first $80 of your 1,000, and that's about it for softwares. I mean, you just got to buy supplies, like boxes, poly bags, like that might run you like $50 or so. So it's it's like I'm saying, it's a pretty low overhead, $130 to start in expenses, not too bad. Not many businesses you can start with $130 as your expenses, and then the rest would go to products. So, you can start sourcing. Like I said, like Great Value is a good place to start, and I would allocate the rest of that money to inventory and try to get the money back as quick as possible.
So you would do $130 in software and also supplies, and the rest, $870 into inventory. Do you think it's still possible to start an Amazon business in 2023?
Of course, that's a no-brainer. Amazon's only growing, So every year you'll see e-commerce third-party sales are increasing. I believe it was like over 50% of third-party sales, or over total sales, was from third-party sellers. So, that just shows how big of a market. Everyone can get their piece of the pie. I think that anyone can easily start out in 2023 and have some success. You just have to have that abundance mindset and don't be like, oh, it's saturated. And that's just because, you're thinking too small. Because if you figure out a way to be creative, don't do everything everyone else does, you can definitely have tons of success with Arbitrage, and then work your way up into other business models like wholesale, private label, stuff like that.
Do you have different strategies for pricing for different quarters, or general tips as well for the different quarters? Because now it's not as busy.
Yeah, Q1 through 3 is pretty much the same strategy. You're doing a standard pricing. You're not trying to you're trying to get profit, but you're not trying to, super maximize, pay super close attention to how much profit you're getting. Whereas in Q4, there's stock issues. People are running out of stock all the time because the demand is so high. So you're going to want to be more passive in Q4 and try to raise your prices as much as possible and get the most profit out of your listings. I think that's one thing I really learned this year, was to pay super close attention to how buy box is shifting and all this stuff. And having a repricer definitely helps you maximize that.
When did you start using a repricer, and how important is it to use one?
Yeah, so I didn't use it with books or anything like that, but once I started OA in January, I got a repricer pretty quickly. I think I got it in February or March. And yeah, it definitely helped me scale a lot faster, because to manually reprice everything, it's very time consuming. And these softwares like BQool aren't that expensive. You're paying $100 a month for AI. If you can't afford that, you can get rule based, which if you just match the buy box, that'll definitely help your sales that way. So yeah, I would say you have to evaluate how much time you're spending manually repricing. And if it's over like a couple hours a week, then it honestly makes sense to just get a repricer. You're valuing your time at like $10 an hour at that point if you're spending like 10 hours a month.
And what are some criterias when you are selecting a repricer? Like, what are some of the important criterias that you did to pick a repricer?
Yeah, I definitely think that the AI is huge, because it definitely helps you try to maximize your margin, because these AI repricers are being creative, thinking about ways to raise the price and get you the most profit. So having an AI repricer like BQool is definitely very important. Yeah, you can get by with rule-based, but I think AI is definitely the way to go.
Do you have other friends who are using BQool?
Yeah, tons of people that I'm following and people I've networked with, they all use BQool. They love it. Definitely a great repricer to start with. One of the most well-known in the space as well.
Back to your business a little bit. Like, what challenges do you usually have with your Amazon business when you're scaling up? Because you moved from $1,000 to seven figures. And what are some of those
Mhm.
challenges, especially those milestones?
Yeah, when you grow as fast as I did, it comes with a lot of mistakes, headaches, all that stuff. So, yeah, I would say the challenge was a couple challenges. The first one I really faced was finding a good prep center, and I went to bad prep center, really messed up my cash flow. Things weren't getting out on time. You got to make sure you're going with the prep center that has good communication and has very fast turnaround. So that was my first mistake. And then, so yeah, I'll summarize three because there's probably three main ones. So the second one was cash flow, really understanding how to manage cash flow. We're running a business here. You have to understand how cash flow works and that you need cash in the bank to cover your credit card bills and all that stuff. You can't just be living with $500 in your bank account if, you're doing 50K a month. That's absurd. So, yeah. Then that was definitely what I've been working on, keeping a lot of cash in the bank on hand just in case anything goes wrong or, God forbid, Amazon suspends my account or something like that. I have cash on hand to cover anything that goes wrong. And then the third one was managing returns and realizing how returns will impact your margins. So you got to pay close attention to those returns. You could do it on a product basis, like what product's getting returned the most, try to eliminate that because returns will eat your margins alive. So that's definitely one thing I've been working on and really improving in 2023. So that's the big thing. And also managing, inventory as well, going off that, managing inventory that's been lost. There's plenty of reimbursement softwares out there that can help you. Also, if you have a prep center or you're logging all your purchases, make sure everything's been received and all that stuff. So that's one of the challenges I'm going into 2023, try to figure that out and create a good system for that.
So the three that you mentioned, the first one is the prep and pack center. And for the people who don't know what a prep and pack center is, it's a place where you will send your items in and they'll help you prepare the products, pack it, and then send it to Amazon for you. So let's talk about the first one. When is a good time to start using a prep and pack center?
Usually, I mean, it really depends on your situation, but for me, it was around the 30 to 40K mark. I was doing this full time, luckily, so I had more time to prep. Yeah, so once it got to the point where it was like very time consuming, I was spending more hours prepping than I was sourcing. I realized like this has got to go. Like we got to figure this out. I hired my brother. That didn't really work out. Fortunately, family
It's
in
hard to
business
work with
doesn't always
family.
work out. Yeah. So yeah, my mom was like, "You got to get this stuff out of here." They were selling the house, all this stuff. So ended up just getting a prep center, and it was probably the best decision I've made. Other than the fact that I got a bad one to start out, but now the second time was a charm. Got a great prep center. I've been working them for almost a year now. Yeah, definitely. If it's getting very time consuming for you and you feel like you can't meet your spend goals, it's a good time because you're prepping so much. It's a good time to get a prep center. Usually it's that like 30, 40K range. But if, let's say you have a 9 to 5 and you're doing 20K a month, then it's definitely not a bad time to bite the bullet and just get a prep center because you have to realize that, your 9 to 5 is taking up a significant amount of time. You have to figure out a way to outsource this, whether it's hiring a packer or just getting a 3PL like a prep center.
And you talked about like having a bad prep center. How do you
Mhm.
pick a prep center to work with? Like, what are important? What's important when you're working with a prep center?
Yeah, as I was saying before, but I'll get a little more detail on it. But it's communication is first and foremost. Make sure that they are responding to you. They're quickly. If there's ever an issue, that they immediately will reach out to you, whether by email or phone call. Like I talk to my prep center like at least once a week. She calls me like if there's a problem, and that's really nice to have that personal experience where they care about their clients. And the second thing is definitely turnaround time. If your products aren't getting out quickly, then you need to find a new prep center. Turnaround time should be 2 to 3 days max. Maybe Q4 it's a little bit longer, but typically you'll see for a good arbitrage prep center 2 to 3 days. And then the final thing is, especially if you're doing arbitrage, it's to do it in a sales tax free state. So there's plenty of sales tax free states like Delaware. Those are the three main ones. Yeah, because if you're paying sales tax for these products, then you're essentially just losing money, losing margin. So getting a prep center basically balances that out, and then you're not prepping the product. So I think I did like a tally of how much I would have paid in a sales tax or a sales tax state like New York, which I was operating in. So the sales tax was like 8%. So I added up to like how much I spent on prep fees, and I think it exceeded that amount just off like a eyeball estimate, but still you just got to think about how much you're saving from not paying sales tax.
So the three states, Montana, Delaware, and the third one was, what was the third one?
Oregon,
Montana, Delaware, and Oregon.
or
And that's when you,
and then yeah, another big one as well. Just thought of as New Hampshire as well.
okay. Yeah, because it doesn't
Those are
make
the four
sense if
main.
you're paying all this tax when it comes in from the online arbitrage. You purchase it and then you got to pay another sales tax on that. Really go into your profits as well. So, which part of the job can you outsource and which part should you do yourself?
Yeah, I think sourcing is the one thing you should be always doing yourself, but obviously have a team to help you with it because sourcing is the biggest return on your time. You know, you can find a couple leads and make a couple $1,000s. So, you know, think about that. If you find a couple leads in a few hours and then you spend $6,000 to make 2,000 back, you know, you're making like, let's say $500 an hour or something like that. That's the biggest return on your investment. Prep is definitely the least return on your investment, which I would recommend outsourcing to anyone pretty quickly once you've learned the prep process, just because you have to think about how many hours you're spending. You know, you're basically working a $10 to $15 an hour job. You're valuing your time at $15 an hour, where you could be doing more stuff like sourcing, which makes you more money at the end of the day.
That
Other
totally makes
stuff to
sense.
outsource is like reimbursement, repricing. That's a great thing to outsource.
Are there other things you do usually in your free time? Like, do you have other hobbies?
Yeah, I mean, I like to work out, go to the gym. So that's pretty much the main thing. Go to sporting events, stuff like that. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I like to be very focused in my work and all that stuff while trying to maintain some kind of social life.
And how many hours do you currently work on your Amazon business on a weekly basis?
So it's around like 20 to 25 hours a week or so on just sourcing and looking over the leads and all that stuff. So it was a lot more, you know, before I outsourced prep and all that stuff. I was working like 70, 80 hours a week to get to this point. So it definitely takes a lot of work. If you want to scale fast, it takes a lot of work. So, and a lot of time commitment. But yeah, the beauty of this business is as you grow and get more capital, you can really pull yourself away from it and focus on other things like helping people start their business and content and stuff like that, which is great.
Joe, where can people find you to get more information?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Maze and Aces, all the same. And we do have a free Discord that I've been doing with Side Hustle Experiment. So yeah, anyone can join that. You know, tons. We have over 700 members. Great, helpful community there. Tons of free information to help anyone start out who's looking to get into online arbitrage. We'll link that in the rest of the stuff. It's called the FBA Inner Circle. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know, you'll see me talking about it all the time. It's kind of my baby right now. So
That's fantastic. And then also a shout out to John Mascarella, who you work together on the Discord group. So definitely join their free Discord group to get your foot in the game, and also follow Joel to find out more information about from a real seven-figure seller with real experience who has grew tremendously by 1,000% from when he first started. Thanks for your time today, Joe. Really appreciate your time.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.